All right, welcome to another episode of the View from the Fence Post podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Turlington, sitting here today with a good friend of mine, Derek Rowan. Welcome, bud.
Thank you for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Me too, actually. We were talking a little bit earlier about how we haven't really done a podcast episode in like 10 weeks. And we're going to consider this also the culmination and the closing of season one. So you get to kind of bring us to the arbitrary last episode of the season. So really, really excited to have you. But we have been out for about 10 weeks. If you kind of go to C2's social media page, we had a friend of ours, Cam Marston, provide us with a 10 video series that was just incredible. Lots of great wisdoms to be found in those. Hopefully, a lot of the companies that are watching those videos or with their employees and staff is creating good culture, and families are having good conversation around those as well. But we took a break so that we could really highlight and showcase those on our social media page for a few weeks. But happy to be back and happy to have you here, man.
Yeah, absolutely excited to be here.
So tell our listeners a little bit about who Derek Rowan is, what do you do, and kind of where you come from.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Derek Rowan, and I own a small payment processing company. And I have fixed receipt printers. No, I'm just kidding. But what I really do is I provide business owners with a way to take payments and a more organized way to run their business through payment portals and point of sale system, things like that. As far as who I am, I grew up here on the Gulf Coast. And so I love where I live. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Chloe. She's way cooler than me. And that's about it. I've got 2 cats. We live over in Daphne, and just live a simple life and try to enjoy every moment. So that's pretty much what we do.
Very cool. We met at a BNI meeting out in Fairhope. My buddy Jared Smith introduced us for the very first time. And I remember my impression of you. You were the president of your chapter. And so it was your job to kind of keep the flow of the meeting going. But man, always has a smile on his face and is the contagious energy producer in every room that you walk into. It always seems like you're super, super upbeat and happy-go-lucky, so to speak.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I definitely think I inherited some of that from my parents. I think a lot of us get our likeness from them. And so if you met my mom, I always say she's me times 3. So,
oh, geez.
yeah. So
it's we should get her on here.
It's a lot. You should. It would be an interesting one. So, yeah, definitely I try to keep the positive energy.
Well, cool. So how about an icebreaker? What's something that people generally don't know about you?
Well, most recently, people might not know that I host a karaoke night on Thursday nights at Twist 181.
Come on.
Yeah. Yep. So that's pretty fun. And like you and I were talking about earlier, I am a DJ on the side, which is a lot of fun.
Agreed. Yeah. That's cool. That we share that in common as well. And we had a lot of good conversation around that. But that is so much fun. And you do weddings and stuff as well?
I do. Yeah, I kind of got my start at the Hangout where I was an MC on the mic. And so I learned a lot of really cool tricks just from being on the mic for 40, 50 hours a week every summer for years. And so I learned about how to entertain crowds and how to catch people's attention and get them to engage not just with me, but with each other, which is something that I've kind of carried over into my karaoke business and into my wedding DJ business, which is something that I think kind of sets us aside, is the ability to get people to engage with each other, not just, try to be the DJ and be the spectacle. It's really about getting everybody else involved.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I knew that we were a kindred spirit when we met. So a fellow musician, techie, so to speak. So tell us, what do you like to do for fun and unwind in your off time?
I eat. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of hobbies, but I don't make as much time for the hobbies just these days. I'll focus a lot on work. So really, my wife and I just like to eat. We have all of our favorite restaurants. We love Mexican restaurants and pizza. I think pizza is my simple pleasure in life. So just getting a Bronx pizza from Giannino's, or
I was just about to ask, where's your go-to?
Yeah, or going to Trattoria and getting the Trattoria pizza. So just love local pizzerias and good food.
So I've never heard of either of those. Am I super missing out?
You're missing out.
Yeah.
I would say go to both, and they have different experiences. Trattoria has a great atmosphere. Mm-hmm. The pizza's phenomenal. They also have a really good Philly cheesesteak sandwich. I would go there for dinner sometime. And then Giannino's, that has been around in Daphne for a long time, but I would get the Bronx pizza if you go to Giannino's. So,
cool.
But
both are worth the passion.
Both are worth a visit, man.
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit. of background on you. I know you're currently in business for yourself. We talked about that a little bit, but kind of where'd you grow up? Kind of how did this lead into that kind of story?
Absolutely. So I grew up as a preacher's kid. That's kind of my story. So my parents were pastors of the same church for my entire life, 26 years. And I kind of grew up as a preacher's kid. And that really, I think, had an impact on who I ended up turning out to be. My dad was a lot older. He actually passed away about 3 years ago, but he was 77 when he passed away. And so naturally, I think he was 53 when I was born. And so, that definitely had an impact on shaping who I was. I think I've always been sort of an old soul because he was so much older, and I have a lot of similarities and things in common with him. And so that's sort of where I started out. And I think I always wanted to go into business because prior to my dad being a preacher, he was in business, and I just had heard so many of his stories growing up. And so that was something that always interested me. And I felt, well, maybe I won't go into ministry, but maybe I'll be bivocational. That's kind of what was always on my heart was, well, you know what? I'm going to establish myself in the world. And once I can do that and support my family with whatever career path or with whatever business I choose to start, then when I have more availability of my time, I'll use to sow that time rather than sitting on a beach drinking a margarita. So that's kind of has always been my mindset of, maybe I'll be bivocational. And so marketing is what I ended up choosing to pursue. Don't know if that was a great decision or not, but hey, here we are. um, I think I found that marketing is one of those things where you don't have to have a college degree for it. I did get a 4-year degree in marketing. I would say if I could go back, I probably would take some classes, maybe even do some online study. But I think with marketing, the biggest thing is just diving right in. So I did get a 4-year degree in marketing. I think it all works out for good, and it definitely has benefited me. Thankfully, I didn't go into a lot of student loan debt to get it, which I think is something if you're going to get a degree, make sure it's worth going to college for, and make sure that you don't go into a bunch of debt to get it. So, but my marketing degree ultimately did lead me to my first job, which was a career as a marketing director for the Hangout Hospitality Group. And I think that actually was pretty impactful for me because I got to work really closely with some brilliant people. And I think had I not had the opportunity to do that so early on, in addition to the advice that my dad was giving me, I got to work very closely with the owner of the Hangout. And he imparted a lot of wisdom and knowledge and personal time into investing and growing, my ability to lead and to communicate and to delegate and do all those different things. And so ultimately, it all did lead me down the path that I'm on now. So I'm grateful that it all worked out the way that it did.
Well, awesome. So being a part of the wonderful career in marketing and especially with the Hangout group, man, I didn't know that about you, number one, but number two, I can only imagine the stories, that you've probably accumulated. There's so much fun to be had in all things Hangout and all the festivals and music and stuff like that. Can you think of anything that sticks sticks out right now? Did you meet anybody cool in that situation?
Yeah, I have a lot of stories. Some of them I can share and some of them I can't.
Sure.
And I mean, somebody interesting that I met was Brett Favre. I got to meet Brett Favre during the NCAA beach volleyball championship. I was standing there with the owner of the Hangout, and he pointed over and said, "Hey, that's Brett Favre." I said, "What?" And apparently his daughter was competing at the event, so I got to take a selfie with him, which was really cool. And this past Hangout Music Festival, I actually did get to get into the VIP areas and got some special love, which was really nice. So a lot of cool stories. Really, I think the most fun part though was just the day-to-day entertaining thousands of people, because it was a really cool feeling of, every hour we would have a new pretty much a whole new dining room, and our dining room sat 600 and we could fit about, over 1,000 in the courtyard. So every couple of hours you were dealing with a whole new group of thousands of people. And so I think that was a unique opportunity, not only to just learn about people of all different backgrounds, by touching tables and interacting with those crowds, but really unique to be able to be in front of that many people. I mean, there's not many opportunities where you can be in front of 1,000 people in a day. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Absolutely. When you mentioned your father earlier, and also being you mentioned he was in business for himself as well. It reminded me of a person who was a really big influence in my life as well, and I don't talk about him nearly enough. but his name's Dr. Rick Cagle, and he was the pastor at the church that I'd just come from a few years ago, and he had passed away early in life, if you ask me. But he was a an amazing pastor of at least 40 years, influenced a lot of great people. But he owned several businesses and always had just this great, especially for a fledgling insurance and financial services guy getting into the business a little bit over a decade ago. He had also had some dealings in this business as well, and he just had all the great advice to give. And I'll never forget one of the stories he told me. It was like, Joseph, he said, I was driving down the road and I was looking at purchasing this old vehicle that had a for sale sign in the window sitting on the side of the road. And I believe, and I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it was essentially like, hey, I'll buy this truck from you if you just give me a meeting. If you just sit down with me and talk to me and hear me out, kind of thing. And the way the story went was the business that they ended up doing together more than paid for the premium cost to purchase the truck, the price on the window. And he was like, in the business where you're making a living for yourself, if you need more than you have, then there's an opportunity to make that happen. To go out and get it for yourself, or to look at it through a different lens or a different perspective. And and one other thing that this led into was I remember asking my wife if we could purchase a new flat screen TV when we moved into our newer house. The wall was bigger, so it dwarfed our 42-inch flat screen. I was like, this looks silly. And she was like, it's a want. It's not a need. So let's not even go there. And I'm begging, please let me have the flat screen, 65 inches of just greatness. And my wife made me a deal. She said, if you can produce income over and above what we typically need to pay our bills in the amount of that TV that you want to purchase, in 1 month's time, you can get it then. And so I'm like, all right, you got a deal. So I just start hammering the phone and calling everybody I know and asking for them to recommend anyone to me that they might know, and that whole story. And I'm about 1 week out. I've got all the business in to reach my goal, but it's not come through and come out the other side as income yet. And so the TV goes on sale, open box, like $1,000 off. And so I go to my wife. I'm like, please, we got to go. Like, it's in. You see it right here on the screen. She's like, no way. And so that was super humbling. I talked her into it. I'm a little bit of a salesman sometimes when I need to be with my wife. And so we run out to Spanish Fort Best Buy. We get the thing. We bring it home. It's not even in a box. It's wrapped in black plastic. And I tell her, I was like, I start opening it up. I'm so excited. And she said, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm about to mount this sucker. Let's go. And she said, no, it stays in the plastic until it comes out the other side. And she made me look at this thing in the corner, sitting on the ground, started gathering dust up, over a week's time. And,
she sounds like a good partner.
We slid across the finish line, and that TV has been mounted there for about 10 years, 11 years. And it's awesome.
It's awesome that she held you accountable, and that she was on the same page with you about reaching your goals and wants versus needs. I think that's really interesting. My wife is the same way about giving. We believe in like giving to church, and I think that the phrase that has stuck with me all these years is that it's better to operate on 90% of your income with being in covenant with God than 100% without. And so she will not allow us to miss a tithe payment. And it's something awesome. I'm guilty of, oh man, maybe we'll wait to next month and then we'll catch up. And she's like, absolutely not. It's one of those things. She holds me strong, accountable, feet to the fire. We're not missing a tithe payment. And that's something I'm grateful for, because I look at how much tithe we've paid. We've paid our 10% for years. And I think about how much money that was, and yet how successful we are. And I think it's just kind of like the open hand and closed fist mindset, and the scarcity mindset that you think, oh, well, I can't afford to give this. And I think you can't afford not to give it. But it's really interesting because it's a foreign concept to somebody that's, never given before, or somebody that is not in the habit of giving. So I think that's one of the principles that we live by is, I think if you can learn to be a pipe, to be something that water flows through, if you can be a pipe, that you're going to receive a lot more in life. And so I think if you can be a good steward of money, And one of those things means not buying frivolous purchases all the time. You got to enjoy life and you got to enjoy your money. Otherwise, what's the point of it? But if you can be a pipe and, let money flow through you, not just to you, then I think that you're going to receive a lot more out of life. So you can't be like the parable of the man that buried the money in the backyard. The parable that I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, he buried the money in the backyard and he was scolded. And then, so that's kind of my definition of money flowing to you. But if it's not flowing through you, then, you're going to limit yourself.
It's a good word, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Man, we got deep today.
And man, I'll be honest, it always goes deep with me.
Yeah.
I suck at keeping things on the surface level.
Good.
Just because
good.
I like to think deeply, and I've always thought deeply since I was little. So it's one of those things where I'm not great at small talk for that reason. I'm working on it, but I like to talk about the deep stuff sometimes.
That's good.
Yeah.
So when we were talking beforehand, it was cool that you'd mentioned that this isn't your first attempt at small business. That you'd have some other, you call them small hustles, side hustles in your life, and before this. But what ultimately led to your decision to going into business for yourself as your primary endeavor, and what do you like about doing it that way?
Sure, absolutely. Well, like you said, I've owned businesses since I was in high school. My first one was called Rowan's Mowing, and so that was a yard work company. And I worked it with a partner of mine, my buddy Weston, and we went out and got some yards and had a little route that we were doing, and we thought we were just rolling in it, man. Making a couple $100 a week, and we did that for about three or 4 years together. Had a consistent book of clients, and that was kind of my first experience. And I just remember what a blast that was. And ultimately, I did need to enter the workforce so that I could gain more work experience and solve more complex problems. Because at the end of the day, you can make a lot of money mowing yards, but the more complex the problem that you solve, the more opportunity there is for you to grow your income. And so that's why I started looking for more and more complex problems to solve. And so the next thing I did was, marketing. And from there, I learned social media and things of that sort. And the problems that I'm solving today are even a little more complex than just what's the right caption for this post. And you can make a lot of great money in marketing as well. But I've been looking for more and more complex problems to solve. And also just using the resources that are available to me, like some of the businesses, the business that I most recently started before my current business was Rowan Weddings. And so with that business, I DJ weddings and Christmas parties and things like that. And I used the skills that were available to me because during my time at the Hangout, when I gained those skills of being in front of thousands of people constantly, it gave me the ability to be comfortable on the mic. And I thought, man, if I can just buy a system, I've got the know-how. All I've got to do is build a quick program and get some bookings. And so I used the skills and knowledge that was available to me. And so that kind of is what led to that. And so this business that I've started here now is really the first time that it's been my main source of income. Always my businesses have been side hustles, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And I think side hustles are great, man. They teach you to be scrappy. They teach you the fundamentals of business. They teach you about how to manage your expenses and cash flow and all that fun stuff. And also side hustles can be the thing that allow you to pick up your main hustle. And actually that was the case with weddings for me. Were it not for Rowan Weddings, I don't know that I could have made the leap as soon as I did to start Rowan Payments, which is my business now. And so Rowan Weddings allowed me to have a bit of a buffer for those future bookings that I'd already been planned out to have income during the time when you're starting from ground zero and you have to start business all over again. Mm-hmm. And so I think side hustles are great. And so for any entrepreneur that wants to ultimately work for themselves one day, start a side hustle, man. I think I heard the analogy one time, you don't have to jump out in the water and swim to the boat. You can pull the boat close and step from the dock onto the boat, or at least get it as close as possible.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It almost seems like, from an objective standpoint, listening to a little bit of your upbringing and having a little bit of exposure to small business as a kid and kind of your experience with the hospitality group and then owning several businesses since you were young, it almost just feels like an affirmation that you're just meant to be working for yourself? Does it feel like that
It
sometimes?
does feel that way. I had some mentors even recently that kind of guided me into the business that I'm doing now, and it was funny because I would talk to him about, you know, job opportunities and, oh well, I'm thinking about going into this new sales job or into this new role, and he would just kind of shake his head and say, okay, well, honestly, man, I think you're an entrepreneur, you know, trying to be somebody that works for somebody else, but I think one day you're just gonna have to come to terms with the fact that you need to work for yourself. And it's funny because sometimes people realize things about you before you realize them about yourself, and I think that was the case with how it ended up turning out for me. I thought that there would be a way that I could you know, solve problems for another business owner and ultimately feed and provide for my family. But I think ultimately, the best way to be in business is to be in business for yourself.
So we always talk about the personality of the podcast here. It's meant to be a showcasing for someone that's got a heart of gratefulness and humility, and we always understand that there's no way that I could ever have gotten to where I am without help from somebody. And you mentioned a couple of people on the podcast already that were influential to you. You're talking about your mom's you times three, and you mentioned your dad, and you've talked about a couple of mentors already. But just share with us a little bit about who you would attribute you making it this far in life and kind of getting here to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, you start with your parents. That's the people who invested their lives to raising you. And so my parents definitely imparted a lot into me. I think having a dad that was older brought a lot of a different childhood for me, because a lot of people are raised by dads in their 20s, you know, and that's unfortunately that's what my kids are probably going to deal with, you know. So they're going to have to deal with me figuring things out and learning how to do stuff. And my dad had already been through a lot of it, and so he had a lot of wisdom that he was able to impart into me that had he been 20 or 30 years younger, maybe he wouldn't have been able to raise me the way that he did. And so I think what he was able to teach me was probably the most impactful thing. And during my time, you know, at the Hangout and my early career, my dad and I would go and have lunch at Wendy's every week. That was our thing. And so that was our time to talk. And he was very interested and invested in what was going on. He would say, all right, what happened this week? And I would tell him, and he'd say, okay, well, this is what you need to do in that situation. And he loved to give me advice. And then he would want me to come back next week and say, hey, did you do what I asked you to do? How did it turn out? You know, how did it go? And I think those were some of the most influential talks. And ultimately, me deciding not to go off for college was a really big decision that I'm grateful for, because had I gone off to college like I was planning to, I would not have had those valuable years, which, you know, at the time I wouldn't have known would have been the last years in my dad's life. And so having that time to soak up all the knowledge, I feel like we really got to just really got to get everything out of our relationship that I could have hoped for, as far as being close to my dad in the last years, and being able to have him impart all that wisdom and knowledge. And then, I mean, as you know, there's lots of mentors that teach you different things through life. And so I had a mentor named Hayden who I still attribute a lot of appreciation and I'm so grateful for, because during a period in, you know, difficulty in my life where I was trying to search for direction and things like that, he really took me under his wing. And for a Bible study that we went to, and it was just me and him, and he imparted a lot of knowledge, and I'm really grateful for him. I'm really grateful for Shaul, the owner of the Hangout. He really took me under his wing, and I always just thought it was nuts when, you know, I would see his phone call and it'd be 8 o'clock at night and he'd be calling me for a question or idea he wanted to explore, and I'd hang up, and I just think, what does this guy who is so successful want to do talking to a young guy like me? But he, I think, saw something in me that he saw in himself, maybe. And I think he took a vested interest in me and really wanted to see me be successful, even so much as to when I left the Hangout, we left on great terms. And I think we still have positive wishes for each other. And that's a good feeling for me. So just a lot of different mentors. And then most recently, I have a guy that I don't even know if he knows that I consider him a mentor, but his name is Eric. And he's the one that ultimately guided me into this industry and what I'm doing now. And I wouldn't have known about this opportunity if it weren't for him, who he had actually done. He had actually had a payment processing business, but decided to move in a different direction for other reasons. But he told me he was singing the praises of it and told me how much he enjoyed it and the reasons that he left it were ultimately things that I felt like I could deal with. And so he told me that it was something I should give a try. So I think you have lots of different mentors in life, and I don't think that you can ultimately take credit for your own success, unless you're born in a ditch and you raise yourself. But that's not the case for any of us. So
Born in a ditch and raise yourself.
yeah, exactly.
Oh man, well, cool. It sounds like you had some really great people that you surrounded yourself with. I love that I think Shaul.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how to pronounce that right, but you'd mentioned that he took a vested interest in you and he wanted to see you become successful.
I believe so. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever expressed that to me directly, but I think actions speak louder than words.
100%.
And the fact that his time was so limited with how many businesses he ran and how many employees he had, and he would take time aside and turn his phone upside down and tell people when they came and knocked on the door, it'll be a minute, when he was talking with me, and he would sit down and invest time in me. And so to me, I think actions really speak for themselves.
Absolutely. Well, maybe one day I'll sit in the on your side of the podcast, and I'll to talk about a few people that I feel the same way about. There are definitely a couple of guys um, that I felt were really, they did way more than they should have or had to for me, and I'll definitely want to show my gratitude one day. But awesome. So bumps in the road. I'm sure it's all been sunshine and rainbows, super easy all the time,
Oh
going
yeah.
through and being on your, I think, like fourth small business now. Um, so, is there anything that you can think of that were hiccups or setbacks that, um, that you eventually had to figure out how to smooth those things out to continue to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I've already talked about this multiple times, but the biggest bump in the road was my dad's passing. He was the glue that sort of held my family together. And being a young guy and having your dad pass away, it's an impactful event. And as much as you don't want it to, to stop what you're doing or to affect your life, it does. And so that's something that I think had an impact on my decision to change careers. It had an impact on my relationships with my workplace and the place that I was working, and ultimately what led to me deciding to work for myself, I believe, because I think it taught me that life is short and life is precious. And it really forces you to be present and think about the fact that, that you're not guaranteed many, many years. Each day is a gift. And so I think that's what it taught me, is that I need to, as quickly as possible, figure out a way to enjoy and impart what I can into life, and not wait until I'm 40, 50, 60 years old before retirement to decide to be happy, or to decide to take a risk and to bet on yourself. And so I think that was probably the biggest bump in the road, but bumps in the road build character, And so it's like, I think that was a serious life-shaping event for me. And something that, took years to overcome, honestly, and something that never really leaves you. I actually stopped by and visited my dad's gravesite yesterday, and, you just show gratitude and appreciation, and say prayers, and hope that you have the same type of wisdom and guidance. So that was a life-shaping event. And more recently, as far as, smaller bumps in the road, there was a month where I had a great month with a lot of success. And sometimes you got to know that when you've got a really good month coming, there's probably going to be a dip. So you just need to prepare for that as a business owner. Know that if you've got a month where you just, where you're on the mountaintop, chances are a valley could be coming, and it probably is. So just don't let that stunt you. Don't let that discourage you. And that's something that I wish I didn't let get me so down in the dumps, because it's easy to want to quit when, it seems like everything was going right and then suddenly everything's going wrong. And it never fails. Murphy's law does hit. And so that's why, if you can save up money and have an emergency fund, that's very important if you're going to start a business and different things like that. And for us, we've always tried to have as little debt as possible. And so, when my wife and I were engaged, we paid off her car and tried not to take out a whole lot of loans or anything like that. And so having fewer payments definitely helped during the months where business was slow.
Mm-hmm.
We had one month where my wife's tire blew out. My car broke down 3 times. I invested thousands of dollars in fixing it. Our AC went out. it seemed like our house was, it seemed like our life was like a sad country song. Honestly, I was like, my dog died and my house
Oh
is
man.
broken. So I had a month there where it was just, I was really stressed because, like I said, it was a slow month, and that happened to be the month where everything was breaking. And then I started getting a pain in my side, and I didn't have health insurance set up yet. And I thought, oh my goodness, man, this is the end. This is the end, And so, I think just trying to have faith, and that's something my wife preaches to me constantly is, um, just have faith that it's going to work out, and keep doing what you know to be, right. And I think on those months where you're not seeing the results, just continue to do the activities that lead to success. You can look at your past track record and say, well, what led to success before, and what are other successful people in my space doing, and just do those activities that lead to success, and know that you're gonna reap the rewards. It's just a matter of time.
So that story reminded me of we all have like the pieces of advice that we've been imparted to us from other people. But this one is, I guess, one of my greatest hits. It's one of those that I always think about. It always comes up. But a friend of mine, Matt, told me one time. He said, in this business especially, he said, don't overly celebrate the victories and don't overly sulk, in the losses. He said, if you're going to be successful long term, just like you said, identify whatever it looks like for you, whatever your box that you need to check every single day, whatever that is. Make sure you just go to work and check it, and don't let anything cut your legs out from under you. So you're at home hiding under the blanket crying or something because something didn't go your way. He's like, that's going to happen. But also, if you're out high fiving too much and over celebrating the wins, then you're taking time away from what you were doing to get to that point in the first place.
I think that's the lesson that people that's the lesson that's not taught, is not to over celebrate the wins. And it's a funny thing because you think, oh, I don't want to be a negative person, and I want to be positive and show gratitude. It's like, you can do all of that, but you need to limit your reaction, because like you said, what goes up must come down. And so that is the biggest thing I've learned is when you score a touchdown, hand the ball back to the ref. Don't get overjoyed and think, oh, I've made it, because you just got to enjoy the process. And like you said, not over celebrate the wins. I think that's something that's not taught.
I love that. Hand the ball back to the ref.
Yeah.
So from an expectations standpoint, being in business for yourself, fairly new to this business that you're in right now, what is your expectation for the next maybe few years? What are you hoping will happen in business? What are you expecting from it?
Well, I told you earlier, I just want to be a pipe, and that's the truth, and I don't know what the number is. There's not a number in my head of, oh, well, that's what I'm working towards. I want to have a fruitful life. I want to be able to enjoy things and go on vacations with my wife, and be able to do things with money. I mean, that's definitely something I want to be able to do. But at the end of the day, I want to be a pipe. And I've told her, if we're ever very wealthy, I don't want to be a person that grips onto my money and is so afraid to lose it. And that's why I think looking at it as a game of percentages is something that I try to do even now. So this is the percentage that we give. This is the percentage that we save. This is the percentage that we invest. And this is the percentage that we enjoy. And if you make it a percentage, well, then it's never really about how much money there is. It's just, hey, well, this is what we do with money. And when there's more money, well, great, we can enjoy more money, and we can give more money, and we can invest more money. And so for now, it's really just continuing to run and operate the business, keeping the lights on, and working for hopefully the day where we have an abundance. And when we do have an abundance, I could see myself potentially having an in-person location like what you guys have here. I think this is awesome. I could see myself having employees, but ultimately, if I do, I've always felt like I want to create success for myself and be able to reach down and pull somebody else up to the next level that they want to achieve. I don't want to, if I can help it, use others to achieve, let's say, step on their shoulders and get ahead. I want to make sure that I have enough to provide for my family and my business before I try to help somebody else and impact their life in that way. So I think that's something that people who try to grow too fast can sometimes fall into that mistake of, when you yourself are still trying to feed your family and you try to bring somebody else into your business, that can create a difficult situation where um, you're not able to help them and to that responsibility that you have to your employees. And so I think for me, I'm going to just put my head down and continue to work. And one day, if I'm able to hire people and to treat them very well, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to, try to do the best that I can. So, but I could see that in the future.
Yeah.
We'll see.
My buddy Mark, well, consequently Mark Cagle, I talked about Rick, his dad, earlier. Mark, and it may have been a Rickism passed down to him through his father, but he told me, he said, you can't feed people from an empty plate.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I like the way you put it.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to talk more about your business. Specifically the types of work that you're out there doing for people, who the clients that you're specifically looking for to serve, and how, if anyone's listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, "Oh, yeah, I need that," how would they find you? How would they get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So easiest way to get in touch with me, shoot me a text or give me a call. I try to be very available. And I think one of those things that, really sets you aside in business is just to communicate, and pick up the phone. And so that's something that I do. And so for people who are needing my services, they can call me or they can text me. My website's got all my contact information, rowanpayments.com, or they can go to my Facebook page, just look up Rowan Payments. And I've got all my information there. On my website, I try to outline as much as possible what we're about. So if you do go to my website, I try to make that a showcase for this is what we're about and this is how we do things differently. I think one of my questions on the website is why choose Rowan Payments versus other competitors? Because ultimately that's the question that my clients have to ask themselves is why should I work with you? And so I try to give as many reasons that are important as possible of why a client should work with me. Number one is local service and zero contracts. That's really our motto, point blank and simple. And so we work closely with our clients. You have a person that you can get a hold of. You're not sitting on hold with a big corporation for hours to get a simple problem resolved. And I think that's some of the things that really set us aside. Like I said, no contracts. That's one of those that, the world is changing and people like to have the freedom of choice and they don't like to feel tied down. And it's one of those things where I feel a duty to continue to earn somebody's business. So, and honestly, I don't like keeping up with the paperwork. So I wouldn't want to do contracts if I had to. So we don't do any contracts. There's no processing agreements. There's no early termination fees. If people find a solution that's better for them, I'm not going to penalize somebody for making a decision that's right for them. And so those are just some of the ways that we try to do business differently. But the solutions we provide are point of sale systems, which is essentially a way to take payments, track inventory, have employees clock in and out. It's an organizational system that processes your payments. It keeps track of your sales and your costs and all of that good stuff. We all interact with them. A lot of people don't know what they are, but every time you go to swipe your card at a coffee shop or a restaurant or a retail place, that is what a point of sale system is.
And that's the same system that when you get that text message after you leave, that you've got so many points or
your rewards here.
Yep.
Your free coffee. And so point of sale systems are what we provide for retailers and in-person businesses. We also have payment portals for service-related businesses. There's a lot of different systems we can use to help people manage their customers and send digital invoices, text message, email. And again, all with the added benefit of having a local person who can train you on how to use it. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And having a simple 1 hour meeting with my client to show them how to use the portal and teach them the ins and outs and just being available when they need to call is really kind of what makes all the difference versus, we've all got competition. I always say, well, I've been looking for the industry that doesn't have any competition, but I can't seem to find it. And so, there's competition out there, but I think being available to people, being honest, and having somebody that is local that they can communicate with is really a huge plus. So that's where you can find us. If there's new businesses opening up, that's always a good opportunity for people to talk with us because they're more than likely going to need a way to take debit or credit card payments, and we have a solution for them. Mobile businesses, mobile flower shops or food trucks, we have solutions for them as well. We have mobile terminals and things that are can work off their own signal and things like that. So really kind of a solution for everybody. We have something for big restaurants that need complex, robust point of sale systems, all the way down to a small coffee shop that just needs, a tablet-based terminal. So try to have options for people. And we do have multiple point of sale systems is something that I think sets us aside. We're a bit of a broker. That's something you can see on our website if there's, any interest there. So always appreciate referrals. And that's kind of how I try to work my business. I go where the referrals go and try to make myself referable. So ultimately, that's how I do things.
Well, I'm just one opinion, but I think you've done a pretty good job at making yourself referable, man.
I appreciate it, man.
And I can see, and this is just me talking, but always your MC skills that you talk about, kind of that you gain from the hangout and just through your personality, man. You're good on the podcast microphone, dude. This is your first podcast, you said, and but I don't believe you now.
I was nervous. I was nervous, man, because it's a long conversation, and you do a great job interviewing, which I really appreciate. You keep the conversation going and ask great questions, and even the questions that you have laid out here, I think are interesting questions, which is ultimately what makes for a good conversation. So.
Well, I don't know, what the goal of the podcast is, other than hopefully it influences somebody in a positive way that hears it. I'd always thought that the people listening to this would either be someone who's already achieved a level of success that they were hoping to achieve, and they can appreciate these the stories of other people that help people get there, or it's the person that's still really pushing, which hopefully everyone's still pushing, but they're not quite at that level yet, and this is an inspiration to them. They're like, oh man, if he can do it, I can do it. Hopefully that's the two people that are listening. And, I appreciate you having, I appreciate having you on here, man. I learned a lot about you. You know?
Absolutely, man. We got more in common than I realized. I didn't know we were both musicians. I didn't know we both were DJs.
Did you play the drums? Didn't you say you played the drums?
Yeah, that's my main instrument.
I remember, I think you told me that probably a year ago, but I'd totally forgotten that.
Yeah, I played drums every Sunday at my church for about 11 years.
So I have played the drums at church. I do remember, and this was at Rick's church, by the way, going in there for the first time, and I wasn't back in church yet. I was kind of wandering around trying to figure it out, and then I was invited back to church, and I drug my feet going back into church, and then I do remember my first Sunday back in there, and my wife had already been going for a few weeks, and they walked up to me and they said, "We heard you're a musician." I was like, "Oh, come on, wife." And they were like, what do you play? And I was like, "Well, I'm a guitar player and I sing." And they were like, "That's fantastic. We needed a drummer."
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what a church will always do. They will get some service out of you, whatever they need. And they lent me a drum set, and I'd always been around one. I was good enough to keep a beat, but certainly. And then it eventually turned into and morphed into every Sunday, because we were a small church. You didn't know what instrument necessarily you were going to be on when you got to church that morning.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I've been there.
11 years, right? Almost the same number.
Nice.
Doing that and picking the songs the morning of, practicing them the morning of, and potentially having to change instruments at the last minute. But it always worked out. It never bombed.
Well, I tell you what, being a church musician will teach you to think on your feet. Yeah, because there's not always sheet music, and there's not always a defined structure. Sometimes you have to learn to go with the flow, which I think is pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, as always, I wouldn't be able to sit here and interview cool people like you, and without my team, C2 Wealth and Wes, allowing me to convert an office into a podcast studio, which is now my office, because after we made this room look really, really cool, I couldn't help but to always want to be in it. So it's where I pretty much operate out of now. But we really enjoy this podcast and getting to share messages and things like that. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to be a part of it, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, it always helps us a ton if you share it, to on your social media page or something like that. But if you need Derek services, definitely reach out, and we'll see you next time. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. C Squared Wealth Strategies in Cambridge are not affiliated.